Okay, our next presenter is David Doughty, and David needs to set up his laptop here. David is from Barclays Bank. I'm going to move my laptop out of the way so that he can do that.
Continuous delivery in action. Yeah, there you go.
Properly introduce you. So David is a release engineer at Barclays, and his career in software development started when he graduated in 1986. Prior to joining Barclays, he had been involved with development, building, and releasing of both systems and applications across a wide variety of industries, including aerospace, telecoms, as well as banking. He's had roles from developer to software configuration manager, and for a while took a time out from real work, as he calls it, and operated as a pre- and post-sales consultant for several years at Rational Software. David.
All right. Thanks very much. Can everybody hear me? Am I turned on? Right, let me get PowerPoint sorted out. Slideshow. Okie dokie. Unfortunately, I can't see my notes, so I'm going to have to wing it again. Okay, so this section of the day is designated continuous delivery in the real world. So I'm not sure whether that's kind of true or not, but I'll relate the current experiences that we've got at Barclays and where we're at with our continuous delivery journey, as they like to say. So we're not just a recent startup. We've been around for a little while, and I think some of our IT systems have been around since day one as well. So some notable recent introductions: Pingit, etc. First data center in the banking world in the UK. In terms of where I sit in the bank, so this is roughly what the bank looks like. So retail is your personal banking. Wealth, if you've got a bit more money to spend, then we'll help you invest it wisely. Capital, investment bank, a bunch of charlatans. Barclays card, credit card, and the corporate bank, which is the bit that I work in. So we predominantly deal with business banking. And we also provide services to the other businesses within Barclays. So I work for operations and technology, and I work for Run the Bank. So I work for operations. So I'm not a developer. I receive, for want of a better term, the output of the development organisation, which gives me a kind of different slant on continuous delivery from most in the room, I would suggest. So in terms of our estate, what we're kind of primarily addressing is the Unix, Linux, Windows world. We have a bunch of other stuff, Tandem, Secure Unix, Mainframe, which should send you run screaming. We don't do anything with those. They do with themselves. They keep telling me, we've been doing this continuous delivery for years and years. I think the evidence would be contradict that somewhat. We have somewhere in a range of 400 services, primarily application-based in corporate, half of which are like tier 1, tier 2, critical systems. The rest kind of less critical. And for this year, we have somewhere in the region of 120 odd approved projects to change those services. That doesn't include the business as usual kind of activities, fixing bugs and stuff like that. Not that software has any bugs, of course. It's been fully tested and is fully guaranteed. And any other small projects where people might be doing stuff under the radar, which is probably double that number of projects. So things have changed dramatically at Barclays. So as was explained in my introduction, I used to work for Rational. So they're now part of IBM. And in the day, we sold Clearcase. So there you go, it's my fault. You're all using Clearcase. So if you're still using Clearcase, that's not my fault, that's your fault. I stopped working for IBM well over 9 years ago, so yeah, I claim no responsibility for your continued stupidity. So, in terms of Barclays, from a run the bank perspective, this is operations. We had a huge amount of technical debt, and I know I guess the vast majority of people here have some kind of development orientation, for want of a better term. So we're not just talking about how much time and effort it takes to fix a bit of software to the ideal standard, as they say. This technical debt is around the level of service that we deliver to our customers. So the number of outages that we have with our critical services, number of customer complaints, yada, yada, yada. So that kind of thing, so somewhere in the range of 5 years ago, Barclays were in not a particularly pretty position. And my colleagues who are from Barclays in the audience are probably going to kind of report back, and I'll be looking for a job later. So if anybody fancies offering me a job, feel free. So we were not in a particularly good position, certainly from a corporate perspective. We had outsourced the vast majority of the development effort. So it went to SI partners, and they really weren't interested in delivering the kind of quality that we needed. If anybody's tried to deal with an SI partner to get a service delivered or a piece of software, you basically define your requirements up front, they go away, they build it, and they bring something back which doesn't necessarily meet what you wanted in the first place. And if you want to make a change, then they start asking you for more money and more money and more money. And so at this particular point, the corporate bank was in a fairly poor state, to put it mildly. So they decided to make some changes. So new CIO, CTO, CFO, whatever they call themselves, somebody in a position of power, somebody fairly high up in the food chain decided it wasn't good enough. We didn't have enough ownership of our own intellectual property. We were relying far too much on external vendors to deliver and not getting the kind of quality of service that we needed to operate. So relating back to Andrew's talk earlier, yeah, it's a lot easier to build a new system, and there's a lot of very bright people out there who can build a new banking system in very short order. So take that as a hint. If you don't do something and do something about it soon, you're going to be superseded. So way back in the day, I used to work for British Steel as a process engineer. You all know what happened to British Steel. It no longer kind of exists as a real force in manufacturing. So corporate decided to make that kind of change. We've gone from somewhere in the range of 500 permanent staff who were predominantly administrative, project management kind of capability to, in terms of IT and operations, we're not talking about the business here. So we've got somewhere in the region of 1,250 permanent staff now. And we're kind of gradually reducing the number of SI partners that we kind of rely on to do this. Speaking to the culture, we're also, as a group, introducing some interesting behaviours that are expected in the bank. So I guess to address some of the not so nice views that people have of bankers, given the recent history. So introducing particular values and behaviours that people expect to adhere to in terms of respect, integrity, etc., etc. And there's a bunch of initiatives around that kind of thing to really starting to build a kind of the team atmosphere within the bank. So working together as one team. So I'm sure you've seen our kind of adverts and heard our go-to bank kind of statements kind of thing. So if there's any other banks in the audience, yeah, they're all coming to us. We're putting it out of business. HSBC especially. So just to kind of give example of how things have changed. So faster payments, you've probably all heard of. It's a way of transferring your money between banks in kind of less than 6 months. So it doesn't kind of sit in our account kind of earning us lots of money and stuff like that. So you get to trade in 4 hours. Faster payment scheme has got a fairly punitive kind of penalty system associated with it. So if we're out offline for any kind of length of time, we generate points. So 2 or 3 years ago, Barclays Corporate were somewhere near the bottom of the pile in terms of service outage and such things. As of kind of last month, we were pretty much near the top of the pile with very little zero outage. Kind of dipped, so I guess I've got to be truthful at this point. We did dip at the weekend. Somebody pulled the plug on a server and we were out for over 60 minutes in mid-peak time, so that gets flagged up. But that's the kind of thing that we're being measured against. So I'm not really interested in whether the software is kind of engineered to like 100% perfection as a lot of people would like it to be. I want it fit for purpose, I want it to do its job, and I don't want it to kind of fall over. And I want the customers at the end of the day to be fairly happy with what we're delivering in terms of the kind of service. So all I'm asking from the development community is that that's what you deliver in terms of quality of the software. So as part of these kind of initiatives to fix the sort of service outages and stuff like that, they introduced a project called Quantum, and this is where I kind of joined Barclays 18 months ago. So we were looking, the project was given kind of 4 areas to kind of look at: requirements and planning, build and release, testing, and environment management. So my particular kind of forte is build and release, software configuration management, release management, that kind of thing. Other teams were given the job of looking at how we manage the business requirements, how we bring them into projects, and how we can feed them in through the testing, so we build the right test cases ready for a build and for releasing into the environment. So that started off, as I say, 18 months or so ago, and out of it came kind of pretty much tool sets in each vertical. At some point, somebody decided that this was a good way of, this was a kind of software pipeline, and we eventually, it transpired we had a DevOps solution, continuous delivery solution, or however you want to describe it. Well, not necessarily a complete one, but certainly the start of it. So what we ended up with originally is requirements and planning in the shape of some IBM tools. So I still don't know how they got in there, but they did. Rational Requirements Composer and Rational Team Concert. So they were all designated as for corporate, the way to capture and elaborate your requirements and to feed them into the development teams. So a developer knows what they've got to deliver. So you've given them a clear set of tasks that they've got to complete, and they've got to look at the requirements so they can actually look at the use cases, storyboards, and all the prototyping associated with it and say, oh, that's what they want, not just the back of the fag packet that normally comes through to the developer. So the bit that kind of most interests me is the software configuration management. This kind of stuff that allows development to deliver their releases into the estate. So I kind of start. We actually designed it from the back end forwards, but it works the other way on the slide, so we'll go with it. So version control, you would need to. I'll knock the lectern over next. Pardon my French. So you would think that version control was a kind of a very common, what's the word I'm looking for? My mind's gone blank. A piece of technology. It's something that as a configuration manager, I would expect a developer to do as just off the bat. It doesn't need to be told to do it. Well, unfortunately not. That's not quite true. So while we have got a kind of a group standard for version control, it kind of really doesn't work very well for everybody. So different domains, all that kind of issue. So yeah, we don't want to talk to anybody outside investment bank and stuff like that. So we built our own. So we threw that together on a server. So Subversion Git, and on this legacy stuff. So if you want to use our software development pipeline, version control. And we did have teams that didn't use version control. So they were still managing their code in folders on their desktops without a backup, which really embarrassed them when their production system went down and their laptop had been rebuilt. So I'm not sure how that works. I'll give you the name. So if they appear on your looking for a job list, you know to avoid them. Just to give you a heads up. So the next stage in our pipeline, we want to be able to build this in a consistent fashion. So yeah, you could go ahead and just stick it on your desktop, and we have got lots of instances of this on the desktop. That really doesn't help me from an ops point of view. I want to be able to know that what you've built is built in a consistent fashion. It's built on a stable platform, and you're not dragging in all sorts of wonderful third-party libraries from the internet. So we've provided a central continuous integration and build facility. So using Jenkins Enterprise works really well. I've used Jenkins in a couple of places. So quite happy with what it does. I know a lot of other people like other continuous execution integration engines, whatever you want. So Urban Code, TeamCity, all that kind of stuff. I like Jenkins, so that's what I installed. I'm not going to ask permission for it anymore. So we have a central master server, multiple slaves supporting our main kind of platforms, Windows, Linux, AIX. I'm not talking about that too much, but it's going. So we've got a central integration engine. So developers, you can go away and cut your code, check your code in, and I can build it, and I know that it's been built, and I know what's on the platforms because I built the platforms, so I know that they haven't got any dodgy software on it, unlike your desktops. And we publish to Nexus, so okay, so this could be any one of several repository management solutions. We chose Nexus because I used it before, so therefore I'm installing it, so we'll use what I want. Not what you want. So it doesn't. It's a tool. Yeah, who cares? You're software developers, so you should be developing software, not interested in the kind of technology that's at the back. It's not going to affect your life greatly. The fact that it's being published into Nexus. Why would you bother with it? Was that a factory Nexus, Jenkins, Subversion, Git, Perforce, Clearcase? As long as it doesn't get in your way, what is the problem? We'll talk about some of the problems later. If I don't overrun, I'm kind of. Might be running behind. I didn't. I obviously haven't scripted this, as you might have noticed. So we published the Nexus, and so Nexus is our kind of, as an operations team, is our central point of reference. Our Divinity software library, Gold Source, anything that goes into the estate goes into Nexus. Well, okay, that's aspirational, but we have the backing of senior management, and if you don't, and you're caught delivering stuff into the estate, into production, in any other fashion, then we reserve the right to fire you. So we've got sponsorship to around that thing. So the reason that Nexus is there is, so this stuff only works for in-house development. So I don't know how many people actually work for banks in the audience. I don't recognise a few. But a lot of what we deploy into the estate is third-party systems. So we don't have control over the source code. We don't have control over the build. All we get is stuff delivered to us. So we have Nexus as a way of capturing what's been delivered to us, and then we can feed it out into the environment. So we can deploy it into dev, test, SIT, OAT, UAT, whatever testing kind of floats your boat sort of thing, before it goes anywhere near production. So that's why we have Nexus. And the deployment engine is outside of my control. So we have two main deployment mechanisms in Barclays currently. We have something called Blade Logic, which is from BMC. It's a script-based kind of deployment technology, and they've only made it available on Unix, which really doesn't help if you're a Windows project. So it's great. It does what it says on the tin. It allows you to deploy stuff, but it's script-based, and it has to be developed by somebody who knows how to script it. So it's a bottleneck, and that's a real problem for anybody trying to deploy in any kind of continuous fashion. Certainly not if you want to do it quickly. So it takes the team to typically sort of 6-8 weeks to develop new scripts to do deployments, which given the number of projects we've got going, just isn't kind of sustainable. The other product we've got is relatively new to the bank. It's CA Lisa Release Automation, or Nolio as was. So we've had some experience of using Nolio to automate the deployment of our applications into the estate. It does what it says on the tin, so you have a very nice kind of automation facility where you can pretty much graphically join together your kind of steps and push whatever files, artifacts that you need into your estate. And you can use the same deployment engine for all of your environments, from dev through to production. So, which is good. Less so given that the team that supported had some issues at the weekend when we were trying to do a live deployment, which kind of stuffed our deployment. So other things we're interested in out of our continuous integration and build solution from a build and release perspective is, so it's all well and good kind of relying on developers to do unit tests and stuff like that, but we want to kind of look at the quality a little more closely. So we have some, I should have to use the term, we have our own golden balls. So at this point, the central build solution is a great place to sort of examine the code and look at the quality of the code. So we've plugged in Sonar Cube as it is now. We plug in Fortify. Both do kind of static code analysis. So Sonar is open source, so most of you, I would assume, have heard of it. If you haven't, then take a look. We use Fortify in the bank for security vulnerability analysis. So it's static code analysis. So it allows us to drive the sort of any security vulnerabilities, SQL injection issues, embedded password kind of stuff, which of course you don't do. Yes, you do. Into the as part of the build process. So rather than have to wait until you deploy into pre-production and find that somebody's running penetration test, and then all of a sudden all these issues come out and you delay your deployment by 6 months because it takes that long to fix the code. You can check it while you're building it and get that information fed back. And the last bit, Doxygen is just an automated documentation engine. Again, it's another open source product that just allows you to elaborate the code using class diagrams, so you can actually visually see what the impact is for if you need to make any changes. So we use it for the run the bank teams to say, rather than just give them like several 100,000 lines of code to go figure out what the dependencies are, you can look at the class hierarchy and go determine, when you find the bug, what else am I going to break if I fix it this way? And it helps them in that way quite dramatically. So we have the standard testing view of the world, Quality Center. We have some additional kind of testing capability that we were looking at. Most of this has fallen by the wayside, unfortunately, due to other constraints in the bank. Hexawise is a pairwise testing tool, which does work very well. It reduces the number of test cases required to generate the maximum test coverage. And we've seen some very significant results from an automated testing view. You publish the test cases back into QC and automate them and that kind of stuff. We were also looking at service virtualization, as with a lot of other areas of the bank, at which point it became a group decision. And of course that means there was no decision. So no service virtualization. Okay, well, some we win, some you lose. So that's pretty much our DevOps toolset as it stands at the moment. So we set it up, we've got a service supporting it. It was done off of the back of a quality initiative in the bank, but we set it up as a service, so it's highly available. All the servers are clustered. The build slaves are VMs, so they can be spun up and spun down, although I really wouldn't want to have to build another one just yet. They take an age to provision. We'll talk about that shortly. So we have a service, we've got customers, we're onboarding teams, and it's all really looking quite positive, especially for the ones that are trying to do the kind of agile development, continuous build and stuff like that. We do have a few people who are still stuck in the mud. In terms of where we're going to take this, I don't know. Well, I'm just an engineer, so where would I like to take it? So we have something called Evolvement, which does environment management. That's another key part of what we consider our continuous delivery, development, whatever you want to call it, solution. So it allows us to examine the environment and identify differences. So say in production test, you can say 2 boxes are supposed to be the same. Well, they're not. One's running Red Hat 6, one's running 6.4. It's got X libraries, it's got Y libraries. Therefore, how can that be representative of your production environment? Okay, so we can do something about it. And we got a lot of that. And I'm sure you'll have a lot of that as well if you actually look closely. And I'm sure you'll find that your Unix support teams are throwing in their patches on your production environment without telling you as well, which is great fun. So at the moment, everything is static. So we built it on VMs, but their VMs are static. We have an interesting provisioning environment at Barclays. So a VM is very analogous to a physical box. It takes 6 months to deliver. I have no idea why. I do malign kind of, I should have said at the beginning that if anybody's got a nervous disposition, should leave the room because I'm likely to insult everybody at some point. I'm doing well at the moment. Does anybody I have not insulted? So what we'd like to do is start to look at some of the provisioning of the environments. So we'd like to start with our build environment. So strangely enough, we already use Puppet to provision our VMs, but that's as far as it goes. So they build a Unix environment, and then you have to ask somebody to put users on it. Then you have to ask somebody to put storage on it, and it takes some time to get that environment built, and then figure out how you actually get access to it is another challenge. We think we figured out what we're doing in terms of negotiating the red tape. So we think we can, and certainly some of my colleagues who's sat over there, hello Wendy, they already use Puppet to provision their environment. So why can't I? I think it's most insulting that I've been told not to do it. So we're going to do it anyway. I'll ask for forgiveness later. Other initiatives in the bank are coming up with stuff like OpenShift. I mustn't forget the f in the shift. I knew you'd get it. See, you'd get that. So laugh a day. So OpenShift is a platform as a service solution, I guess similar to what Pivotal are delivering with Cloudbeats. I don't know much about it other than our group technology infrastructure services team are promoting this as the way forward, which is okay. Probably would work for our build engines, being able to provision Jenkins, some testing to a degree, but we don't run any of our services on OpenShift. We don't run production on it, so we can't really test the production deployments on that. They have to be run on the platforms that we run in production. Why would you want to test stuff that's going to run on something else? But they seem to think differently. So we're parking that at the moment, although it seems like a good idea. Platform as a service sounds like a good idea, just like to get somebody to do it. So as you might imagine, we've got lots of different tools on here. We don't have any kind of single view of a project across all of these tools. Great, agile, tools don't matter. We can plug and play whatever kind of tool we want for version control, build, storage, that kind of thing. But I still have to present this story back to my management of what we're actually doing, what we're delivering. I have to be able to illustrate that I can take this requirement over here. This is the task that's been given to a developer. This is the code they've changed. This is the build it's gone in. This is the release it's been packaged in. And this is where it's been deployed. I don't have the ability to do that anywhere. So we have to build a dashboard, unless somebody's got one that they'd like to share with me. So we have to build the adapters to all of these tools to actually present this information so that my management can see the pretty graphs that show how well the codes are doing and how their projects are proceeding, and the fact that quality's up, defects are down, all that kind of stuff. So in one place. They don't want to go to each of the tools. They don't want 15 URLs they're going to point at. They're managers. Give them one page and they're happy. So there you go. I've insulted managers now. There's no chance of a job offer. So this is my last slide, I promise. How long have I got left? I'm just going. When do you want to eat? doors are locked. So the ongoing and future challenges. Adoption. Adoption is always a challenge. Getting people to change their behaviours, getting people to do version control, build, is just so much trouble. It wouldn't be so bad, but it's well over 25 years since I started doing this stuff. I really expected you guys to be doing it a lot better than you are. Maybe it's because we've got developers in London, Manchester, Lithuania, Pune, and they all want to do it in completely different ways. I don't know, but come on, it's not that difficult. But we're making progress. We are getting some adoption, quite significant adoption in projects. We're also getting a lot of sponsorship. So what's working for us in terms of adoption is, so we report back to our steer code. So it's the executive steering committee for corporate banks. So all the execs who own the services sit around the table, and my boss goes in and says, okay, you've got 2 services who are compliant, you've got 15 who are non-compliant, you've got the next one, you've got no compliant services, you've got no compliant services, what are you going to do about it? So basically we name and shame the execs, and it's amazing how fast the project teams come back and actually ask to start engaging with you to do stuff. So not that fast actually, they've still got to deliver stuff into the business. As I mentioned, a lot of what we deliver, what we release into the estate is from vendors. So we've got a database SWAT team. So they go in and they take apart database systems. And the quality of some of the solutions we're delivered is barely adequate. Certainly doesn't adhere to any of the standards that Oracle kind of suggest for how you should run a relational database. So that's something we're looking at. It's not something we do with continuous delivery, but it kind of feeds into the automation that we're going to be looking at later. Something which is very close to our minds at the moment, business restructuring. So my slide at the beginning saying we've got corporate, capital, wealth, retail. So not anymore, we don't. So corporate, retail, and wealth, and all now part of PCB, personal. I can't remember what it's called now. So there you go. That's how new it is. They have not articulated the. So along with this, there's a lot of obviously there's a lot of people up the food chain who are moving around. So there's a lot of kind of uncertainty about what's happening and who's doing what and who owns what. So we're just basically trundling along, waiting until somebody tells us exactly what's going on and where we're going. A lot of our pain comes from our group technology and infrastructure services. So these are the guys that manage all our Unix services, Unix servers, Windows servers. Traditionally, they used to do some of the release management and stuff like that. But they're also wrapped up in a deal of red tape that makes provisioning of the environments exceptionally challenging, to say the least. We had a presentation. Maybe I don't know whether I'm supposed to say this now, but I'll say it anyway. So we had a presentation from our Operations and Technology Chief Operating Officer. It's a new guy. He's been in the bank for like 2 months. So we're going to cut through the red tape. We're going lean and we're going agile. So watch this space. We'll see how that works out for us. So those things that are kind of in the background that have caused us pain and will continue to cause us pain when we're trying to do things. Where we're going in terms of the solution, so we want this dashboard. So pretty much the only way to kind of articulate how well this is being used is with management metrics. So the management want to know what's being delivered in terms of quality, improving quality. We want to see that, and we want it reported back without having to kind of manually cobble together bits and pieces. Automated testing and closing the loop. So at the moment, our test environment is kind of fairly traditional, for want of a better term. We want to be able to drive that as part of the continuous delivery loop, and out of the build, be able to kick off automated testing. Well, that kind of relies a little on, or somewhat on, environment provisioning, being able to build the environments to test on, whereas currently we've got static environments. Again, teams kind of pick things up, they build a test machine, and they hold on to it for the rest of their lives, which means we've got test boxes sat in the environment that are doing nothing for like 9 months of the year. So we're kind of trying to put something together that will allow us to build and rebuild environments that way. And perhaps the last thing on the list is probably one of the biggest elephants in the room. So pretty much all we've talked about is application development. So I would say that 80% of our intellectual property is data associated, and nobody provides any kind of version control, version management, release management on databases. And that is probably the biggest thing that we're going to have to start addressing fairly soon. And so that's what we're doing currently at Barclays Corporate. Thanks very much for your time. You can go have your lunch now, and thank you.
We do have a few minutes for questions.
Okay, they can ask questions if they want.
Any questions for David?
Oh, he's going to ask a question. Go on then.
I was just into a very interesting presentation, David. Those points-based SLAs you referred to, are those internal, you say?
No, those are set externally by the regulator. Whoever manages the faster payment scheme.
Right, okay.
It's all publicly available.
Question over here.
Sorry.
Are you running this every night in a pre-prod environment?
No, we're not. Simple as that. So we're not running it. So the automated testing piece is just not done. So we can do the build and the release. We could even do the deployment if we had to. But there is no project yet doing continuous testing as part of their normal day-to-day operations. Maybe some of the other. So I'm speaking from a corporate point of view. There are loads of people doing very similar things in digital banking. So Wendy, who's in the audience, with the mobile banking apps, investment bank, they've got projects doing all that kind of thing. So there are kind of silos of individual projects doing this. What we've delivered for the corporate is a service to get them going and to start delivering a improved quality into operations.
One last question, sorry.
Yeah, it's all right.
Are you utilising in-house services, or is that all internal software?
Everything's internal, yeah.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay.
Continuous delivery are doing for new project or the existing project also?
Bit of both. So we're basically.
Excuse me, can you repeat the question?
So the continuous delivery practice, it's only for the new project or the existing project also?
Yeah. So in terms of continuous delivery, this has been applied across the board. So we're not just looking at new projects, we're looking at existing projects as well. So
How easy to do it for the existing project? Because yours is how used to 300
Yeah.
days. You need to change the practice, culture, everything.
yes,
How easy it is?
yeah, it's not.
Excuse me, so just so everybody could hear, the question was, how easy is it to do continuous delivery for existing projects versus new projects?
An existing project in an established 300 years old company.
Yeah. So for existing projects, yeah, it's not easy. And to be honest, nobody's actually set aside any time in their project plans to do any of the migration to the tooling. So this has been done as an add-on to projects. And projects are fitting in around their normal delivery cycles.
Because yours is, the infrastructure will be somewhere in data center, developer will be somewhere in other country.
Yeah.
So you will be releasing it. So it's not like all teams sit together.
No. So so we're as with everybody, we're geographically distributed. So I work in Southwest Manchester. We've got teams in London, Poole, Lithuania, Poland, Pune, Singapore, collaborating on same developments. But that's no different to anybody else. So it's a challenge. We've got local resources to kind of explain the kind of the technology and help with adoption in the time zones. So we've got guys over in Pune working with us. We've got guys in the UK, and so we have finite resources in my team. When given that we've now got this lean and agile manifesto that we're going to deliver, and we're kind of going to be meeting the management at some point, because we need more people to kind of deliver that at the kind of time scale that they want to deliver it in. So it's not easy. So,
Another question. The question was, excuse me,
Yeah,
can you just repeat the question so everybody can
yeah, so our vendor delivered systems in the continuous delivery model. No. So that's one of the challenges. So we can take the software, but how do we get them to get vendors to be more agile, and how do we get them to deliver more continuously? So, like I say, we pick up Jenkins releases, but we only deploy the ones when we want to. So twice a year we'll do an upgrade unless we have to. There's a fix or something like that. So we want to my expectation is that vendors would operate in a similar fashion. I don't know whether that's realistic or not, but we can't do much about their software development practices other than tell them, if you don't pull your finger out, we'll go use somebody else, which is definitely an option, as some big vendors are finding out. No answer for that one, I'm afraid.
Anyone else?
No, there's a lot of hungry people out there, I can tell.
Okay.
How successful you are in bringing the practice in your office?
Sorry?
Can you quantify how successful you are in bringing the continuous delivery in your 30%, 40%?
Yeah, I was hoping somebody was going to ask me to quantify how successful we'd been, because that would assume that we'd actually measured how bad we were at the beginning, and we could actually tell you how good we were now. So the answer is no. So nobody has told me exactly how bad we were. So I don't know how much we've improved by. So.
Your target to bring the continuous delivery practice for 100 projects. How many projects you are to some extent?
We can look at adoption. So I know how many people have adopted in terms of services, but that's all I've got. So I don't know the figures off the top of my head though. So any ideas, Mark? You no? So we're looking at payments, which is the payments group. I think we're somewhere near 70% of all our apps are starting to use the sort of continuous delivery tooling. Practices, I think that's going to be a bit longer term. But generally, I don't know. So we've got bigger problems at the moment, given that we've just been grouped together with retail and wealth. That kind of like doubles, if not triples, our estate in terms of infrastructure, application services, etc. So it's a significant challenge to get our heads around that and join all the different practices up as well in terms of release management and operations and stuff. We did present to my boss, head of Run the Bank, did present to our new COO yesterday, and he was very enthusiastic about the whole thing. So they are obviously lining up with this lean and agile kind of manifesto. So this is definitely where we're going. Tools and technology, I guess they don't really care. But in terms of delivering the continuous delivery, it most certainly is where we're going. Okay?
Thank you, David.
All right.